Hello and welcome to another episode of Quickies with Angela and Caity.
I'm Angela Dawn of Authentic Heart Coaching. I'm a tantric sex coach and I help couples get closer.
And I'm Caity Wilkinson of Caity Coaches. I'm a sex, love, and relationship coach, and I can help you bring more pleasure to your partnership by bringing more pleasure to yourself. For today's episode, we invited our colleague Cherish Amber to talk with us about same-sex play.
Yes, I'm so excited. We were talking before we started recording, and I said, "This is our gayest episode ever." Yes. Um, Cherish and I met in a business group for sex coaches. And when Katie and I were kind of chatting and realizing we'd never had a queer focused episode, I was like, Cherish can help us change that.
Cherish is a certified queer sex and relationship coach who creates safe, transformative spaces. She's a passionate advocate for pleasure, empowerment, self-discovery, and consent. Cherish helps people connect deeply with themselves and their partners. She believes that at the core of all great relationships lies amazing sex, and through her work, she guides individuals and couples on a journey to uncover their true desires and achieve profound intimacy. We're very excited to hear from you today. Welcome to Quickies, Cherish.
It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much from across the pond.
Yes.
So, to start things off, can you tell our listeners more about your background and your focus area as a coach? How did you get here?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. So, I don't remember a time I was ever not interested in sex. Be that young and maybe slightly inappropriate, but it was always appropriate in my world.
We get it.
Yeah.
I was in high-level management before I became a coach. So I learned a lot about people from a really young age. And then I just realized one day I had a bit of an epiphany, gift from God, whatever you want to call it, that if people could feel good enough at any age and understand their own pleasure, that I might be able to help people not experience some of the things I experienced. So that was sexual assault, R, and other things in and out of relationships. And what started there was a bit of a realizing of my lifelong mission. So alongside all of my work, I have quite a big mission to change the sexual education syllabus in across the world. Because in the UK it's 12 pages long and there is just a single line on pleasure in 12 pages. So that's my mission at some point. Um, so I went on to become a sex and relationship coach. I came out as gay last year, and these two kind of things have, so I identify as a queer, gay, lesbian, all those terms interchangeably, depending on who I'm with or where I am. Sometimes I'll just use them interchangeably. Yeah, but I am a gay woman. Um, and I realized that by combining these kind of two things, I was able to help couples and individuals design a relationship that is their dream
Mhm.
relationship that blows their mind, that lights up their soul. My clients tend to be experiencing disconnect, sexist marriages, porn addiction, or just want to like rip up the old rule book they've lived by for however many years and change the narrative. Um, I use the term queer interchangeably in my work, say queer sex coach, queer, sex and relationship coach, because not everyone identifies with the term queer, and I don't want to put people off my work. Sometimes, as we're going to chat about, sometimes they're just interested in same-sex play. But what I do is just create a super safe environment for literally anyone, regardless of their gender and sexual orientation. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, because sometimes coming to a therapist or a coach as a queer individual or not really sure of your identity or your gender orientation, you need someone who's kind of got some skin in the game. So that's me.
Yeah, beautiful, Cherish. I loved hearing your story about, always being interested in sex your whole life. And I think Katie and I are like, yeah, me too, me too. And so taking that interest and experience and education and putting it together in a way that helps people expand their expression, and I feel like it's just beautiful.
Amazing.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
So, today we are going to talk about same-sex play. And so, first off, Cherish, can you expand on what do we mean by this? What is same-sex play?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate in the new kind of where we are in the world about adding more words, because that creates safety, right? So when I was going through my training, it was, we always said, you know, women, queens, gender non-conforming beings. And that's just an additional amount of words, right? And sometimes that can be a really great way of creating safety. However, to kind of allow it to do what it says on the tin, I say same-sex play. So that identifies or kind of speaks to vulva owners, regardless of gender. It removes the kind of need for gender or how someone identifies, non-binary, you know, trans, however it is. It's the pieces that we are using to play with more than anything else, right? So it could be the, you know, whatever your sex is, if you're having sex with someone with the same genitals as you, that's what it is. So it's just a way of allowing us to talk. So when I'm chatting to people, I can be like, so when you're touching this vulva, when you're touching this clit, da 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 da, it's just a bit easier. It should hopefully create as much safety as possible for as many people as possible. I do my absolute utmost to create safety for everyone. I will not always get it right, and I'm always doing my learning and speaking to all of my colleagues and peers and then the queer community. But I guess if you were to zoom a bit further out, it's just queer sex, basically. It's not het sex of any kind.
And we were just talking right before we hit record about how to define queer and how that has shifted over time.
Yeah, it's a really amazing space to be moving in right now. And the term queer, in my understanding, and I would believe what would be kind of general understanding, is anyone that identifies as not cis het. So not cisgendered, meaning identify as the gender assigned at birth, where cis means the same, so identify as the same. And heterosexual is heterosexual, so someone who is born a man with a penis and someone who's born a woman with a vagina having in a relationship. So that is anything outside of that, anything at all. So it's really broad, and it's a little bit of an umbrella catch-all term sometimes. I think people are like, yeah, but like technically how do you put an asexual person and a transgender person under the same umbrella? Bit of a minefield, but we just try and be as supportive and as welcome as we can in the community.
Yeah. We'll just roll with it and use whatever words we think are going to help people understand.
Yeah.
So let's get into some misconceptions about same-sex play. For example, many believe that for vulva owners, this is a must, or like kind of fetishized really, or something that's done just for the enjoyment of straight men viewing. You know, meanwhile, there's this idea that penis owners, like it would somehow make them bi or gay for wanting to play with somebody else with a penis.
Yeah. So for the first kind of thing I always say when we're talking about same-sex play is your wants, needs, and desires around sex do not define your sexual orientation. They just don't. We don't yuck someone's yum in the kink world and in every other world that we work in. It just doesn't identify your sexual orientation, which hopefully, if I say that enough and, you know, the community say that enough, people should feel more able to explore things. Another misconception that I always want to chat about in these kind of spaces is that same-sex play is somehow inherently more less safe or more dangerous in lots of ways, and it's just not true anymore. You know, we've come on leaps and bounds in terms of where we were in the 80s and even in the 2000s. You know, as long as, you know, technically same-sex play should be no less safe than het play. Like, it really shouldn't at all. So yeah, I always want to talk about that because it's super important. And then lastly, the kind of first bit that you spoke about, which was around, you know, vulva owners, is like, unfortunately it has been fetishized. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
It has been. So like, I always talk about like, hey, like if you want to be private about this without, you know, holding shame, bring it back into the kind of more intimate curiosity spaces rather than like maybe going and having your first experience as a threesome, because that can make it a bit more fetishized unless it's really, really safe. And we can talk about that, like how some people go to Skirt Club, which is, you know, some vulva owners might go to Skirt Club, which is a same-sex play for vulva owners. And they're often married and want to experience stuff outside in a het relationship and want to experience play outside of that. But yeah, just in terms of how to manage that that core need to want to explore it, but worried about the kind of what it might say about you, is like, take it private for a minute, let it be intimate, let it be gentle, let it be inside, you know, in terms of with the person you're playing with, and then see how it feels, rather than having to like blast it across all channels if that's what feels right for you.
I love
Yeah.
that that wouldn't make it like you wouldn't have that same sort of, oh, I need to perform here. Like some people, if you know that there's a third person watching or there's an audience, or it's just like you kind of feel like you have eyes on you, especially if you're trying something new, to
Exactly.
just feel like, oh, I need to make this look a certain way, as opposed to being able to drop in and really enjoy and experience it for what it is.
Yeah, and if I'm brutally honest, like vulva owners have a dramatically different experience in same-sex play to penis owners.
Mhm.
Because the one tends to be, and I'm not trying to blanket statements, but tends to be softer, gentler, warmer, you know, in a different kind of capacity, and more and slower, because vulva owners take what, 10 to 15 minutes longer to warm up and get into stuff and need more foreplay. And
Yeah.
penis owners tend to
Katie
have
and
a,
I like to say women take 40 minutes to warm
well, yeah, we
Nice.
do. Yeah, we do. Yeah, for me, it's like, actually, when there's, you know, MMF or MFF or whatever in a threesome, it's like, it's a lot of dynamics to be thinking about if it's your first time. So yeah, that would be my sense.
Mhm. Beautiful. Yeah, I guess in the beginning of the very adult portion of my opening up to sexuality, I got some swinger experiences under my belt, and just really wild in that community how some kinds of same-sex play can be frowned upon and other kinds of same-sex play are, fetishized and celebrated, and I think, speaking to that's important.
I think
And
it's
coming,
changing a little bit. I do think it's changing a little bit in my
Yes,
experience. And
yeah,
we're gonna, yeah, I think it's changing.
absolutely. Things are opening up more, and I sponsor a room at a local swing club.
Amazing.
I have a tantra room that I do for them, and it is interesting to see the clientele now versus the clientele 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? It's
Mm,
definitely shifting. Mhm.
amazing.
what changes have you noticed in that shifting?
I just think there are more people at the swing club that might consider themselves to be queer, right? I feel like 10, 15 years ago, you weren't seeing that at all. And now you're seeing it some. So that's how you know that the community is becoming more welcoming in that regard. Mhm.
Yeah, really nice.
Cherish, what do you think is needed to help keep same-sex play out of the shadows and make it more accessible for people who haven't tried it before, or who have tried it and just want to keep going and maybe aren't quite as comfortable yet?
I think first and foremost, love and acceptance. It would be like my big societal desire. But I think one of the biggest things, and then one of the reasons that I stayed in the closet for so long, is representation. You
Mm.
so rarely see representation of queer folk. I mean, it's getting a lot better now, but especially like lesbians or queer women, you know, it's just not seen. Sex, it looks a certain way. It's fetishy. It's, you know, pretty intense. It looks like it does in porn, and it's just not what it looks like in the real world. You know, it's 3,000 times better. And and I just it's just representation would be such a big one, and actually also the preservation of queer spaces, safe queer spaces, because whilst everyone can create as much safety as is humanly possible, unless you have the lived experience of being queer, it's it's a really lonely place sometimes. It's a really lonely place to have to, you know, constantly be slightly elevated in your nervous system, looking for danger, looking for those kind of things. So that need for safe space. And then I think the last one would be education around things like biophobia. And I'm really passionate about this. And you can kind of interchange like bi with pan, it in a way, but yeah, it's like being accepting that someone just isn't indecisive or greedy. Those kind of things would be really powerful, because I'm sure we've all heard those dynamics and those narratives, and
I've
they're
definitely
painful.
been called greedy before.
Yeah, yeah.
Can't you leave some people for us? No.
Right.
So outdated.
Yeah.
So I really want to get into talking about the orgasm gap, right? Because that's one of the beautiful things about same-sex play is that doesn't really exist, right, Cherish?
No, it doesn't. um, yeah, so they reckon in het relationships or in male-female relationships, it's about 30%. So 95% of the time, a man will orgasm, and a woman will orgasm 65% of the time. And that's based on some studies that happened in 2018, and they think it might have got a little bit wider. And in same-sex play, it doesn't really exist. I'm sure it does, but the times that it does exist is not in the same. If we were using the kind of like the data, it exists when one of you's like on your period, or one of you's like, I'm just tired and I'm just really happy to give. It
Yeah.
exists in those moments, but if we're on a level playing field, it just doesn't really. A level playing field, and obviously there's people that struggle with orgasm, all those kind of things. If we were to level playing field it is pretty much, it doesn't exist, which is just delicious. And I know, I will be really honest, that when I came out, my orgasms went through the roof in terms of their number.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
the orgasm gap is a huge thing for Katie and I. You know, like we work with this regularly. That's why we created the Pussy Whispering Masterclass, because we want to close it. You know, we want women to understand their own orgasm. We want men to understand how women work. And, you know, when you get two women together, they might not know all the intricacies of what, for example, they might learn if they take our Pussy Whispering for Women class, but they have the same parts and they've played with themselves. So there's a little bit of a different approach, right? You know, you know what you like. And so at least if you're trying what you like as a woman on another woman, she's probably maybe going to like it. And if she doesn't, I'm betting she feels comfortable speaking like with her equal about how she would like it different. And that's part of the struggle in het relationships is a lot of women don't know what they want and aren't speaking up about it. Right?
Absolutely. And especially just in that het relationship, your partner does not have these same parts. So of course they're not going to approach them the same way.
Absolutely.
And so it comes down to so many women just not being comfortable saying, okay, this is how I like my instrument played. This is specifically what I want. Just hoping, okay, I hope my partner's just going to show up and know what to do automatically, even though this is not something that they see every single day. This isn't something that they use every single day.
Nice. It was really interesting. I had this conversation today and talking about like someone asked me if it's when you're being fucked, like really fucked with a strap from a woman or like from a man, like are they the same? Like do I experience them in the same way? And I said, no, not in the slightest. Even if we're doing the same experience, even if we're doing the same positions and the same thing. And I realized it's because in my experience, and I slept with a fair few men, but in my experience, females or vulva owners put comfort, then pleasure. So comfort of the other person, then pleasure.
Yes.
And in my experience, penis owners or men put pleasure, their pleasure, then the other person's pleasure, then comfort.
Yep.
In my experience. And so that was really interesting because it was like, there's a big thing is like, is it okay? Is it in okay? Like, is a strap in okay? Like, where away, you know, because we have a lived experience, if, you know, in that dynamic, we've both got the same parts. So, you know, it's like.
And honestly, that is what I think is really cool about men experiencing anal. Like when a straight or bi man experiences anal play for the first time, it's like, they're like, oh, whoa, okay, wait. It changes their approach to how they penetrate women because they've been penetrated, right? So I think it makes total sense that a strap on with a man and a strap on with a woman, the way they work it is going to be different. The way they approach the
Absolutely.
whole situation is going to be different. Yeah.
I love it. I literally just did a webinar on strap-on sex, and you should have seen my desk. It was hilarious. Like, I had 4 straps in a row, like all different anal pegging. Like, it was great.
Fantastic. Well, speaking of like, how to, right? You said you'd be willing to share some amazing techniques for same-sex play, and I'm pretty sure that's why people are tuning in for this episode right now. So let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say if I start with penis owners, I would say that because when I speak to, penis owners or men who are giving play for the first time, the things they don't know are the following. So you need 10 times more spit than you think you need if you're giving a blowjob, right? Dry blowies don't cut it, right? Not a vibe. I'm aware most of your listenership, as far as I'm aware, are women, but I just want to like play both sides of the card.
Oh no, I think we might have more male listeners than female,
Okay,
honestly.
sorry, that was I
But,
wasn't sure. I was like asking.
maybe it's even. Maybe it's
Okay,
even.
so don't give a dry blowy. Like, they just don't work. Like, they have less erogenous zones, but there's this kind of belief that men have when men start playing with men, or penis owners start playing with penis owners, they think that it's okay just to go straight to the penis. We don't. We make sure there's loads of foreplay involved. Men love a great snog, and it's also new, and it's like a new texture, and there's often beards involved, and they're like, oh, this is so yummy, and it's a really nice place to start. Little bit of like info, like do your anal prep when you're ready. And one of my I'm a big fan of anal prep for everyone.
I want to
One of
talk
my
about that. Yeah.
yeah, anal prep. But one of my big things is that I see in lots, and it's not necessarily like a super hot tip, but it's like a little bit of like sex coach in me, is men or people, actually everyone, have a tendency to fantasize about something, right? And they'll fantasize really hard about something, or they'll see it in porn and assume off they go. I'm going to do it, no question. And that's just not how the ass works.
It's not. It's not.
No.
There's no soundbite.
Yeah.
That's not how the answer works.
I'm a big believer in a small butt plug, starting with a small butt plug, having loads of play with a butt plug in before you actually even get to anal. So like a whole separate session of blowjobs and kissing and touching and hand jobs. Getting flavored lube when you're giving a blowy for men is a really, really great way to like overcome the like worry about what a penis tastes like for them. So like a flavored lube that's like that's edible, that helps a lot of my male clients quite a lot of the time when they're just starting off in same-sex play. And then starting with a small butt plug, working your way up, not going straight into anal, and like working up to, when you know who you're going to be playing with, working up to a penis, working up to a dildo that is similar size penis to one you're going to be working with. And using protection and just doing a little bit of all the normal safety stuff that we always talk about, but it's a different conversation in the queer men world. For vulva owners, understanding that to not get fingers involved at the beginning is often quite a big one, because we see on porn quite a lot of the time, and then we see it in other people, and then we see what men do to us, and it's just not a vibe. In all of the best lesbian sex I've had, there were just no fingers involved for a really long time.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never heard that.
Well, you want to wait for penetration. Katie and I talk about penetration all the time, right? Penetration is also digital penetration, right? That's using your fingers inside. You're waiting for that too. You want the external play. You want to get the whole body aroused.
Absolutely.
And then get the pussy aroused. And then maybe think about using a finger, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And like tribbing is a big thing. So tribbing is like any kind of rubbing. It's the Greek word for rubbing, basically, and it refers to any kind of rubbing. In my experience, it's often the top, whoever's on top's thigh, between your legs, or if you're on the bottom, and it's like I was chatting to this about someone else the other day, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like men do that," and I'm like, "No, I can't even explain it to you. It's different. It's just different because they understand where the pubic bone, right, is. We understand. We have one, and so that you can feel for the clit with your thigh, and you can. I've had the best orgasms from tribbing. Like it's mental. Um, Scissoring isn't as much of a thing as you think, and I'm actually a bit of a scissoring fan with underwear on, if I'm honest, because you've got a bit more of a glide, and then after the first orgasm, when you're super wet, then you can go into like puss to puss feeling. When you're starting oral, use a really flat tongue. Do not use the end of your tongue; it's too sensitive. And in my experience, like don't get to straps straight away. Take your time to get to straps. And if you do use straps, understand, and this is the big one, deeply understand that you have no sensation in that strap. You have nothing. You have not, and it was like the biggest moment when I was like, oh yeah, like there's nothing there. You can't feel anything.
Can't feel what's going on. No.
No, you
You
can't feel
have
any
to ask
tension.
for so much feedback, right?
Exactly.
So much
So
feedback.
that's why like building up that building all of that that safety up, building of that, those communication lines up is super important. And then in my experience, when you do get to fingers, often more fingers, like start with one as long as you've got consent, then go to two, and then go to 3 or 4 is my experience, because vulva owners tend to have smaller hands and they can create a wider space and they can go really slowly because they're not goal orientated.
Mhm.
All of my queer friends talk about how long it is. I would highly recommend anyone who's a vulva owner who's heading into their first same-sex play to leave aside about 4 or 5 hours, because it just takes longer. Not because it takes longer, because we can come as many times as we want. And there was talk like, I've got a friend and I was like, what is your longest session? She was like, 3 days. We didn't leave the bed for 3 days.
Love that. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Yeah, my part.
How does that all land, by the way? That was a lot.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. I'm down with the 3 days. My partner and I have, like every 3 months block a weekend off on our calendar,
Yeah.
and we call it a bed in, and we do as much in bed as possible on that weekend. And I think, that's just a good thing for everyone. Single, coupled, queer, straight,
Absolutely,
doesn't
no
matter.
question.
It's a great
Oh my
idea.
goodness. Recently I was thinking and was like, I never want to have sex that's under 2 hours again. I am not ever interested in like trying to rush an experience. I want this to be like blocked off on the calendar. And I feel like so much of what you just shared, Cherish, like that also translates to every other kind of sex too. There is so much emphasis on going slower, being more present in the moment, not rushing to any kind of penetration, not rushing to any like too pinpointed sensation before you're actually ready for it.
Yeah, agreed.
And
Absolutely.
feedback, and the feedback piece, right? Too, right?
And the emotional connection.
Yeah, and we just and also like slight TW, I will be honest, like also with the vulva owners, we're 95% more likely to have experienced something not very nice, if I was to see.
Yeah.
And so like going more slowly is actually a really great way because it builds that safety. And then actually what I find is people have like, oh my God, I had 5 orgasms, and you're like, well, exactly, because the safety was there.
Yes, right? I feel like Caity, I feel like the wrap up here is that queer sex is what hetero sex should be.
Yes, totally agree.
Like, that's the summary.
That's the goal.
Slow down, be present, take your flipping time, get feedback. Oh my goodness. It's all the same. Yeah. So, Cherish, do you have any last thoughts you want to share with our listeners? I know I just like blew up really quickly with a little summer.
I was obsessed. I'm like that, and I actually was a bit I was a bit awestruck. Like that was such a great place. Yes.
We were all just
I
like, oh my God, Angela just went off.
so good. I'm open for coaching clients. I've got a couple more sessions left, but I'm really excited to be launching a video and 25-page PDF, one for same-sex play for vulva owners and one for same-sex play for penis owners. And they will be live on my website just at the beginning of the month, so before this goes live. And I've also just done the same for strap-on sex. So for any gender, sexual orientation, I've just done one for strap-on sex too.
Oh my goodness, what
Yeah.
fantastic resources. Yes.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yes. I'm really
All
excited
right.
to share it.
Well, thank you, Cherish, so much for your time here today and for sharing your tips for same-sex play with our listeners. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
So my website is cherishamber.com and my Instagram is @thecherishamber. And I'm also quite a lot on LinkedIn, which is Cherish Amber Coaching.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Cherish. This was so much fun that I think we need to have you back. So yeah, let's talk about something early next year for sure. It's been fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to be here with you both.
And that's all for this episode of Quickies with Angela and Caity. Thank you for listening, and you can follow us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
And if you'd like more great information on sex, love, and relationships, be sure to follow us both on social media. I am AuthenticHeartCoach.com, and on Instagram, I'm Authentic Heart Coaching.
And you can find me on CaityCoaches.com as well as Instagram @CaityCoaches.
So if you haven't seen, I have a free 3-minute intimacy triage PDF. You'll see the download link in the show notes. And if you're just not having as much sex as you would like in your partnership, I would encourage you to check it out. You're going to find some solid ideas there about how to remedy the situation. And anyone who is maybe having enough sex with themselves or their partners and they want to take it up a notch, I have a brand new workshop that is happening in November in Annapolis. It is a full body orgasm workshop. It is open to couples and it's open to individual women. And I will be pairing the women up with each other to do some exercises together. So I don't know, it might be my gayest workshop ever, but I did a full body orgasm workshop that was all women when I was down in Costa Rica, and it went so beautifully. I wanted to be able to do that here too. So we're open to couples, regardless of your gender orientation, and we're open up to individual women. And if you're more interested in private work with your partner, let's have a conversation about how I can help the two of you light a fire and transform your intimacy.
We also have a new free training about the magic of slow, mindful sex and why this is the healthiest kind of sex that we think everybody should be having, especially women. You can access that at the link in the show notes. And of course, we have our signature on-demand masterclass series, Pussy Whispering, all about creating deeper pleasure and connection with your vulva and with your partner's vulva. We've got classes for men, classes for women. Check out Pussy Whispering at the link in our show notes as well. And with that said, we'll see you next time on Quickies with Angela and Caity.